Have you ever walked into a classroom of 20 to 30 people and scanned for your friends before sitting down? How long did it take you to find them? A few seconds or less, right? Now imagine a time you've walked into a lecture hall of a couple hundred people. How long did it take you to scan then? At that point, you have to deal with different variables like the increased amount of people and whether you came in from the top or bottom, making it more challenging to spot from behind. With more people in the room, more factors are presented. This increase of people relates well to the idea of information overload. So what exactly is it? James Blake, author of The Information, defines information overload as, and I quote, apathy, indifference, or mental exhaustion arising from the exposure to too much information. Referring back to the lecture hall, you are exposed to so much information that finding your friend group may be exhausting and not worthwhile before the lecture begins. The people who give up their search and sit in front are the people who can't deal with the amount of information thrown at them, like the number of faces, expressions, and often feeling of vulnerability that is felt while under the pressure of everyone's gaze in the lecture hall. This shows a level of stress caused by the overload of information. People tend to think information overload and information technology are relevantly modern terms, but that's simply just not true. Dr. Aaron Krupka highlights the significant points in history where we see these records. As quoted from the Bible in Ecclesiastes 12:12, "Of making books there is no end." The Roman philosopher Lucius Seneca wrote, and I quote, "The abundance of books is a distraction." This teaches us that the oncoming load of information is nothing new, and we have always had to adapt to its acceleration. David Weinberger wrote in his book, Too Big to Know, researchers at the University of California discovered that Americans alone consumed about 3.6 zettabytes of information in 2008. That's enough copies of War and Peace to go from the sun to Pluto and back 8 times. That's history, books, websites, novels, music, movies, social media comments, text messages, just about everything you can think of. So let's talk about why it's actually not so great. The ability to access data recording services like Google gives us access to more knowledge than all the great philosophers of history combined. But how do we obtain all that information? Well, we can't. But we are relentlessly in interaction with it every day, deliberately or not. While looking for a specific piece of information, think about everything thrown at you along the way, like ads, irrelevant links, social media, text messages, and then the distractions outside our devices from other people. This all builds up to sensory overload and affects our ability to think and communicate. Dr. Connie Antoni and Dr. Thomas Elwart from the University of Trier, Germany, talk about how the staggering amount of information we take in can cause us to feel dissatisfied, demotivated, and stressed out in any situation we are in. Families struggle with communication as certain members become angry and frustrated. The overwhelming sensations of email threads leave us stressed in the face of responsibility, leading us to not feel motivated about checking them. We even find significant problems with mental health and social media, not just from the bullying nature of interpersonal comparison, but through the load of stress put on people to build their profiles. Manuel Rodriguez from the Association for the Advancement of Artificial Intelligence believes that our processing speed is affected by the amount of information we encounter on our interactive websites. The expectation to be consistently interactive on social media leaves the popular of us overloaded, making us feel more disconnected than connected. So what am I suggesting we do about it? Even with all this information available, we can't access everything we want when we want it. That's one of the huge stressors of the load. But there are methods that have been developed already to help us find what we want. We use filters. Let's go back to the lecture example. What if the lecture was curated with registered seating and ushers to seat people? Let's say you were looking for a group of friends from the UCO student group. You were able to simply ask one of the ushers where the UCO student group is seated, and they'd take you directly to that row. The ushers act as assistants who filter out all the people in the lecture hall for you with the simple constraint of your specified group. This filter system can be used in any setting with any form of communication or technology. One form we see and use it in every day is on the internet. We see it in search fields, navigation buttons, and especially in the commonality of the hamburger menu. Now the problem that persists is not everyone realizes there are ushers who can help them find their group in the lecture hall. Equally, there are people who don't make the connection between the commonplace usage of the hamburger menu across websites and applications. Same goes for just about anything else. There are errors in the filtering system that we call filter bubbles, where people either don't understand how to use the filters or entirely neglect to use them. Minimizing this disconnect will help people realize how to use the tools created for us to help sift through the information we use daily in a way that is less stressful on us as users. So here's a list of the 5 main suggestions I've developed over time that I believe everyone should be using. Number 1, use filters. Use as many filters as you possibly can. Do your research on email applications, calendar apps, explore the customization settings in your phone and computer, organize your apps in a sensible way, make time to create a permanent organizational pattern for your physical tasks, papers, and digital files. This could also include delegating an AI application or some form of tech helper to aid you in filtering out what you need and reminding you when you need certain things. 2, Develop healthy usage patterns. Put limitations on your social media use. If your friends are really your friends, then they will understand and respect your healthy boundaries. Create a healthy technology use schedule. Getting up every morning and immediately getting on your phone is not going to do your day any good. Laura Shin, a writer for Forbes, believes you should shut down all electronics and focus on whatever task is most unpleasant to you and do it in the morning. 3. Customize your devices to meet your utilitarian needs. This will not only make you feel better when you are using them, but it will help with step 1 by filtering out what fits to your style, your liking, and what is necessary for you to see. 4. A great one that the Interaction Design Foundation recommends is to create a queue for the information you analyze. Whether it be your email, text messages, or any other form of information that is thrown at you often, put it to the side and establish a time to come back to it on a regular basis. You do not need to tackle everything as soon as it arrives. This is something that we as humans have deceived ourselves with. Because everything is at our fingertips all the time, people expect urgent answers all the time. When in history, people had to wait months, sometimes years, to receive word or letters from somebody that traveled across continents. 5. Skim everything that's unnecessary to dive into. We don't need to burden ourselves with long articles when the only large things we will take away are often only the main points. Authors and bloggers are beginning to write with this in mind. The people aren't reading everything they write down, and they'll organize their thoughts in main points now. The advancement of modern technology has increased the amount of information overload in society, and we as users need to work on ways to avoid it. We need to develop steps to keep us accountable to healthy limitations of information use, similar to the ones I've shown you. If we work at this while developers and information scientists develop healthy ways to filter out the information we don't want until we find the information we do want, we may be able to conquer this problem and develop the perfect method to catalog information. My name is Noah Gustafson, and this is my take on how to handle information overload.